Hi everybody, and welcome to part 1 of the Victoria 2 How to Play series. In this episode, we'll just be going over just the basics of the game, the overview, the main menu, what everything looks like, so you can get into a game yourself and not be completely just overthrown with all the menus everywhere. So let's start a new game, single player. Now, up in the top left, we have two dates you can start from. The second one comes with a House Divided DLC expansion pack that you can buy, but originally you just had the Grand Campaign, which is 1836. And if we load these up, you can see this is what it looks like in 1836, and in 1861, it's just further ahead in time, so you can play from different points. Then underneath this will be your current autosaves. You can see I've just got, it saves 3 autosave slots. I think you can modify that in the preferences. But you can see I've been playing as Jan Mayen, which is this little tiny place up here. But anyway, let's go back to the Grand Campaign and get started. So we'll play as France right now, because France, you can see this number here, means they are third in the world. Now the way Victoria 2 works and it's how it rates people is you're rated by your prestige, which is gotten by events and, you can research things to increase your prestige. Your industry, which is your industry, factories, your workers, and your military, which is how many troops you have and how strong they are. Underneath that, you can see France has a population of 8.78 million right now. 64% of farmers, and you have this small wheel here that gives you a little population ratio of what people are. Then wars that France has is none, allies that France has is none, and puppets, which are a bit hard to explain, are countries that France doesn't have direct control over, but belong to France. Let's say that, I don't know, Switzerland was a puppet to France. Switzerland still plays as itself, but say if France got involved with a war, they could call Switzerland in, and they would have to accept, because they are essentially owned by France. And that's what a puppet state is. And you can see on the left here we have a list of countries showing their position in the world based on these three: prestige, industry, and military. So you can see the UK right now, number 1 for prestige, number 1 for industry, and number 2 for military. And I think number 1 belongs to Russia. No, China probably. There you go, China. Anyway, so let's start right now with we'll start with France. And I never explained, did I? So in the rating system, we have great powers, which you can see here, secondary powers. Let's find one. Civilized nations, uncivilized nations, and primitive nations. And the way this works is, the top 8 countries in the world are great powers, and they have access to influence other countries, so they will, protect them, and basically, a lot like puppetry, where you can own a country, but you don't own it, you just make it really like you, so it's probably going to come to your help if you get attacked. So that's one thing that great powers can do. Now, secondary powers are the next 8, so this will be 9 to 16, or 17, I believe. And secondary powers, they can't influence nations, but they can colonize uncolonized areas. So you can see here, this is all uncolonized. And this can be colonized by both secondary powers and great powers. And those are the 2 benefits they get. Now after that is, civilized nations. And civilized nations have access to research technology. And that's pretty much everyone else. They can research technology. Then we have uncivilized nations. These are exactly the same as civilized nations, except they haven't become westernized yet. An uncivilized nation has to get a lot of research points to become a westernized nation, which makes them civilized, and then they can research things. So say if we're playing as Persia, we wouldn't be able to research anything except put research points towards westernization. Then we've done that, we can start researching like all these other countries. And those are the differences that you have here. And then China, I think, is a primitive nation, and I'm not quite sure what the difference between uncivilized and primitive is. I think it just means they have a lot more research points to get to westernize. Because I know you can start to westernize China. And you can see Japan and Korea are both primitive as well, but you can westernize them. So I'm not particularly sure why that's the way it is. But anyway, let's jump into France. Now, this is the main screen. And let me just turn on that music because it's a bit loud. Right. There we go. So, this is the main screen, and the first time you see this, you're probably thinking, what is going on? Now, to make things easier, I'm just going to split this up into sections as this half, this bit here, and then this bit here. So, on the top, we have basically the panel that you're going to be doing everything with. So here you see France. This is prestige, industry, and military, and this is colonial power, which I've told you about. You can colonize uncolonised places. That requires power, so that's what that's for. Now, if we click on France, this brings us to the diplomacy tab, which we'll go to later, but that's just what that does. Now, first on the list is production. These 5 things here are, in order, your top 5 produced goods as a country. I'm trying not to scroll the page too much. You can see here, if we mouse over it, grain, fruit, timber, fabric, coal, and those are the amounts we produce. Now, this little symbol here, if it glows, means that you're expanding a current factory, so you're upgrading it. This one here means there is a factory that is bankrupt, so it's shut down. And, it's not demolished yet, but it's shut down, so you can save it. And this one here means that there are unemployed people that don't have a factory to work in. So you can see here we've got 12,743 unemployed in Ile-de-France. That's 42% of the total people there. So that's what that's for. And if you click on it, I'll go into this in more detail. This is a list of your factories. This is what you're producing in numbers, and these are current projects that you can invest in and capitalists will invest in, which we'll get into later as well. I'm trying not to go into too much detail here so I can explain it fully later. Then we have the budget panel, which is you can set your taxes and what you spend money on, and tariffs, and take loans out, and this is your projected balance for the next day. So you always want to try and keep this in the green. Right now we need to make a lot of changes to make this green, but we are spending quite a lot on things, and we're not taxing too much. Right, next there is technology. And technology, like I said, if you're a civilized nation, you have access to all of this. But it basically splits up into 5 different sections. We have army, navy, commerce, which is your money and economy, culture, which has a lot to do with prestige, you can see here, and industry, which is all your factories. And for each section, there is 5 different tabs that you can see, and they mostly relate to the same thing. Like you can see this one here is all about digging cap, you can see there, digging cap and forts and digging cap. So this is all about fortification of provinces. And if we have somewhere like here, we can see this is all artillery. And they basically split up like that. Now, we'll just leave that there for now. But that's what that does. And these 3 mean here that with our current sort of educational system, we get a bonus to culture and a negative influence to navy and industry. And I'll also get into that later as well. But you can see under here as well, literacy is very important with research. Basically, the speed of your research isn't determined by how many people you have, but the percentage of them that are literate. So you can see here we have 58.3%. Because there are so many people, this is going to be lowered because, there's a lot of people that aren't literate. Where in places like Sweden, they don't have many people, but the majority of them are literate. So this is like 90%, which means they can research just extremely quickly. And this is research points produced by clergymen, and clergymen are a type of job that your people can do. That basically their job is to research. So the more of those you have, this will go up as well. There's a lot to go through here. Next, we have politics. And I won't go into this too much, but infamy is how much people hate you. Suppression points are points that you can use to stop revolts. Say if you've conquered Spain and Spain wants to be independent, you can spend points to stop that movement for a while, but it will come back eventually. So this is kind of like a short-term solution. And these are all about reforms and things. We'll go into that later. And this is the main political page, which is quite a lot. And I won't go into any of this right now because it kind of needs its own section. Up here we have population, so you can see we have 8.78 million. This screen number here means how many people are basically being born per day. So this can go, well, it's the amount of people in your country So it can be negative if there are really poor conditions, and that's when you have to kind of worry and try and increase, the situation in your country. National focuses, I'll go into that in another video, and militancy and consciousness. Militancy is how sort of rebellious your people are, and you have too many of this, you'll start seeing a lot of rebels pop up. Like you can actually see here, in Spain there are a couple of groups of rebels that are trying to capture. And that's what we need for that. Trade. Now, I'm not going to talk about trade in this tutorial because there is, if I can find it, an automate button here. And by default, everything is automated. And automation kind of just works. It's an average trading system. So you're not making huge profit, but you really don't need to mess with it unless you want to play that sort of game. And playing a trading game is like playing the stock market, and it takes a lot of time. And you kind of be focusing on this more than you'll be focusing on anything else. So I recommend just leaving it on automate and just keeping away from it. But on this little symbol here, these are your top 3 exported goods, top 3 imported goods. So that's what that is. Diplomacy, again, needs a section of its own. But these are your diplomatic points, and you spend these to do things with countries like form alliances, increase relations with them, to start a war on them. These all come through diplomacy points, which you will gain at a rate, and I think if I mouse over it'll tell me. There you go. 0.6 I get each month, and being a great power increases that even more. So that's for that. Now military. Again, I'm not going to go into this, I'm just going to cover this small little tab here. So this is, we have 47 groups of soldiers, so if I go into here, this is a group. A group is 3,000 men. So we have 47, or is it? It might mean 47,000 in total. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look that up. But if I build one, I think it should tell me. I'm not sure actually. So I'll talk to that in military. But that's basically the amount of troops you have against the max total that you can support, and this is influenced by the number of soldiers you have in your country. So the more soldiers you have, the higher number of soldiers you can have on the field. Kind of makes sense. This is basically, you can draft your citizens into the military, and this basically just stops all production, and you'll lose a lot of money doing this, but you can see here we get 106,000 men, I believe that is. Yeah, so that's pretty good. So, in times of crisis you can do this. It'll stop your economy for a while, but it can really help you push back invading forces. And again, the same with Navy here. We've got 102 ships out of 107 total possible. And this is officers. And leadership is basically how well led your troops are. And there's a lot of math behind that. I'll go into it and get to it. But basically, I hope you understand what this is now. And again, this is the date. You can see I can unpause, set to different speeds, and it will do things like that. But we're not going to mess with that. You can see actually all this has dropped. Is it? No, this is the same. What am I talking about? Anyway, now this little tab here. This lets you filter things out. And basically you want to leave all this on all the time. What it will show is, you can see right now it has our total armies. So you can see, let's see, this army here in the north of Africa. I think this is Algiers. Not sure. Yes, Algiers. And it has these groups of men in it, totaling 27,000. And this is just all your total groups. And you can click on them and it'll travel around. And that's what that's for. So it's just easy navigation. Same here with Navy. Got there. And army construction. Do you remember that group I built? Just to test it, you can see that here as well. And influence is, like I said, great powers can influence other countries, and that's what that tab is. And we've got a ton of other things, like if you're constructing a factory, it'll appear here. If you're in combat, it'll appear here. If someone's occupying you, it'll appear here. So that's kind of, you just need to keep a look at this every now and then to see how things are going. Now, we're into the final little third of the screen, which is the sort of map and message view. And the first thing I'll do right now is, there's things here called a battle plan, and this is kind of just a little gimmicky thing, but a lot of people like to use it. So if I make a new battle plan here, just call it that, I can kind of just draw arrows around the screen, draw borders. I can place little units down. You know, these are just symbols. I can write text and put that down. It's just a little planning thing that's quite nice to use, and it looks kind of nice. And that just shows or hides it. But that's what that does. Now, these are your messages. Now, most messages that you get, if it's to do with your own country, will pop up. And you'll see it on the screen, you'll click OK or go to event and stuff like that. But for ones that aren't as important, they will appear here. So you can see we've got combat, diplomatic, unit messages, province messages. So if we go to diplomatic, it's showing us all the diplomacy that's gone on with countries that aren't our own. And you see the United Kingdom's entered an alliance with Belgium. So it's just stuff like that. And if you click on it, it'll make them all pop up, as you can see here. And you can just read through them all, and then it will clear that there. But I don't normally do this. And the top here, this lets you pick countries that you want to appear in this list. So say like China, it's at the other end of the world. We're not really going to be involved with it very much, so we can just tick it off and make sure, you know, it never pops up here, so we don't need to read it. But something like, I don't know, Spain's on our board. We want to know what's going on with Spain, so it's ticked. And that's what that does. So I don't normally even use this, but it is nice to have it there just in case you need to check something, or you want to look at alliances and things like that. And the final thing here is the map. And, oh, actually, I've never seen this before. That's just a little log of all these messages, I believe. Yeah. So that's another way you can have it here. That's quite nice. And the map, right. So we have the menu, which is your main menu. You can also get to that by clicking escape. The ledger, which basically is a big list of every country and its scores in prestige, industry, military, like we talked about. And find country or province. So say we get a message that says, I don't know, we have a casus belli, so we have a reason to go to war, and we can declare war on a province. We don't know what it is. Say like, just gonna type in a couple of letters and see what comes up. Say we get a casus belli in Brandon, and that means we can go to war against Brandon. We don't know where Brandon is, so we can type it here, click it, and it shows us it's around here somewhere. So that's what that does. And finally, we have map modes. And right now, we're on terrain map mode, which just basically shows us a bitmap of the entire world. Now, what I like to keep on is political. And you can see here, this just makes it so much easier to look at. And it makes a lot more sense. So you can see here's France. If I zoom in, it shows me all the little provinces, but they're in blue. So I know where borders are, I know what I own, I know what other people own. It's just nice to look at it like this. Now, there are other ones that come in handy. I'm going to go through all of these, but I'll go through a couple that are very important. Diplomatic means how much other countries hate us or love us. So right now, the Papal States, as you can see here, if I click on myself, they like us. Now what I can also do, which is really nice, is if I click on the Papal States, it shows me their relations with other countries. So if I click on Sweden, it shows me Sweden and Russia. There's a little tension there. If I click on Russia, it shows me Russia kind of fine with everyone. Excuse me. And that's what that does. Region map mode. If you live in England, think of counties like Yorkshire. So you can see here we have North East, North West, Lowlands, Midlands, Wales, South West, South East, Eastern. In Germany, which is now Prussia at the minute, you have things like Bavaria and Slovakia and just all the different counties within these places. Which is nice because reasons I'll explain later, but it's just nice to be able to see where regions are. We have revolt risk, which shows you basically if it's red, people are going to start revolting in these areas, so you can get the army there. I don't know what most of these do, but you can just see relations, civilization level, migration, ranking, everything you need is here in case you need to look at the world as a whole. But for the most part, just leave it on political. And that kind of concludes our big overview of Victoria 2. I hope you can now kind of look at this menu and not be completely just baffled by it. So yeah, hope this has helped, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll be talking about production. And thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.